Did you know that Saichi Sugimoto had a real-life namesake? And that, just like Ushiyama, there was a real judo fighter once known as the Undefeated? When you think of Golden Kamuy, you probably think of its unforgettable characters, right? They might look totally fictional, but some of them were inspired by real people who actually existed. Today, I want to introduce 4 characters and the real people behind them. Alright, let's start with the main character, Saichi Sugimoto. He's a former Imperial Japanese Army soldier who fought in the Russo-Japanese War. Now he's involved in a fight over a hidden stash of gold to carry out the last wish of his best friend, who died in war. What makes Sugimoto really interesting is the contrast in his personality. He's genuinely respectful toward an Ainu girl, a Serpa, but at the same time, when it comes to his enemies, he shows absolutely no mercy. And is also known for his physical strength and recovery to that point that he's called immortal. Now here's where it gets interesting. Sugimoto's name was actually taken from the author Noda-sensei's great-grandfather. He had the exact same name, Saichi Sugimoto, though the kanji used for moto is different. What's more, the real Sugimoto actually fought in the Russo-Japanese War as well. He belonged to the 27th Infantry Regiment of the 7th Division, the same regiment that Lieutenant Tsurumi belongs to in Golden Kamuy. At that point, you start thinking, okay, so that's where this comes from. The real Sugimoto was also present at the fighting of Hill 203, which appears in episode 1, and at the Battle of Mukden, where Tsurumi is said to have gotten a serious head injury. These were extremely bloody battles, with enormous casualties on both sides. But the most unbelievable story comes next. At one point, the battalion that Ryo Sugimoto belonged to, about 500 soldiers, was surrounded by about 2,000 Russian soldiers. A complete nightmare situation. So the commanding officer chose 2 soldiers and ordered them to break through enemy line and call for reinforcements. And one of the 2 chosen soldiers was Sugimoto. Under heavy fire, he somehow made it through the encirclement and returned with 4,000 reinforcements. As a result, the Russian forces withdrew, and incredibly, the battalion suffered 0 fatalities. Because of this, he was promoted 2 ranks at once and awarded the Golden Kite Medal. It's the same one the character Sugimoto jokes about in the series, saying he could have received it if he hadn't almost beaten his superior officer. To give you an idea of how prestigious this medal was, recipients were granted a lifelong pension large enough that they would never have to worry about making a living. Which just makes you wonder, what exactly happened between Sugimoto and his superior in the story? Anyway, here's an important clarification. Noda-sensei has said that the character Sugimoto is not meant to be his great-grandfather himself. He says he only borrowed the name. But still, it kind of feels like these stories left a huge impression on him. And now, let's talk about Sugimoto's immortal reputation. Many fans believe this trait was inspired by another real person, Hiroshi Funasaka. Funasaka fought in World War II against American forces and continued fighting even after suffering severe injuries over and over again. Because of that, his comrades gave him a nickname, the Immortal Squad Leader. Sound familiar? Here's another detail that's honestly surprising. In his autobiography, Funasaka wrote that he was shot in the left side of his neck during combat. And in Golden Kamuy, Sugimoto is shot the exact same place, the left side of the neck, in episode 1. That doesn't really feel like a coincidence, does it? Funasaka was critically wounded, but thanks to treatment by an American military doctor, he survived and became a prisoner of war. Back in Japan, however, he was officially listed as killed in action. So when he finally returned home after the war, there was already a grave marker with his name on it, and people treated him like a ghost for a while. During his time as a POW, Funasaka witnessed how advanced American society was and thought Japan needs to learn from this. So what did he do? He opened a bookstore, believing that access to information would matter for Japan's future. And believe it or not, the bookstore is still open today, right in the middle of the Shibuya Scramble Crossing, one of the busiest places in all of Japan. This made me notice one more thing they have in common. Sugimoto chose to live for his best friend's last wish. Funasaka chose to live for the future of society. After everything they went through, maybe both of them used the life they survived for someone else. Next up is Yoshitake Shiraishi. He's one of the prisoners from Abashiri prison, known by the nickname the Escape King, a man who can break out of just about any prison. And he's a laid-back troublemaker. He loves alcohol, gambling, and women, so he's often treated as useless by the people around him. But he also has some incredible skills. He can dislocate his joints to slip through narrow gaps, hide small tools used for escape, and carefully observe guards to pick the perfect timing to break out. Yoshitake Shiraishi is inspired by Yoshie Shiratori, a real prisoner from the 20th century. This is something Noda-sensei has stated himself, and even the names sound strikingly similar. What's more, Shiratori successfully escaped from prison 4 times over the course of his life. And yes, he was known as the Escape King. Like Shiraishi in Golden Kamuy, Shiratori was imprisoned at Abashiri prison. There, he suffered severe abuse. Despite the freezing Hokkaido winters, he was forced to wear thin clothing. In summer, he was made to wear heavy layers instead. Believing he was gonna die, Shiratori decided to attempt an escape. But Abashiri prison was known as an escape-proof fortress. There was no gap in the cell door large enough for a person to pass through. The only opening was a small inspection hole at the bottom of the door, about 8 inches tall and 16 inches wide. It's roughly the size of a 16-inch MacBook Pro. Yeah, there's no way, right? This is where Shiratori's most shocking physical ability comes into play. You know, he could dislocate his shoulders. In Golden Kamuy, there's that scene where Shiraishi dislocates his shoulders and slips through a window to rescue Sugimoto. Shiratori did the exact same thing in real life. As long as his head could fit, Shiratori was able to squeeze his entire body through. But still, there were 2 major obstacles left. First, the inspection hole was reinforced with an iron frame with 5 vertical metal bars welded in place, and he was still wearing handcuffs and leg irons. So how did he get out? Shiratori solved this problem by repeatedly pouring a certain liquid onto the bolts of the iron frame, as well as his restraints. And the liquid was miso soup. Every day, for months, he splashed his daily miso soup onto the metal. Little by little, the salt caused the metal to rust. Eventually, the iron frame, handcuffs, and leg irons all came loose. With everything removed, he dislocated his shoulders and finally escaped. The persistence alone is incredible. But there's one more trait of Shiratori that lives on in Shiraishi. There's a scene where Shiraishi jokingly threatens a cruel guard, saying something like, it's up on me, guys, or I'll escape when you're on duty. That scene is inspired by Shiratori. If a prisoner escaped during a guard's shift, that guard would be punished. So Shiratori deliberately chose to escape during the shifts of guards who abused him, ensuring they would be disciplined. On the other hand, he never escaped during the shifts of kind guards. Not only the act itself, but also that strangely strong sense of loyalty and the personal code behind it feels very much like Shiraishi. Once he chose to stand with Sugimoto and a Serpa, he stayed on their side to the very end. Next up is Tetsuzo Nihei. He's also one of the escaped prisoners from Abashiri prison and a highly skilled hunter said to have killed over 200 brown bears. Nihei uses a single-shot rifle, a gun that has to be reloaded after every single shot, and he has a very clear philosophy about that. If you don't end it in one shot, you die. I've only got one shot, and that's why I can use it with absolute confidence. Nihei is believed to be inspired by a real hunter named Heikichi Yamamoto. Born in Hokkaido in 1858, Yamamoto is said to have hunted over 300 bears during his lifetime. Just like Nihei, his weapon of choice was also a single-shot rifle. It's even said that he could take down a small ezo squirrel, only about 10 inches long, with a single shot. Yamamoto is best known for his role in a tragic wildlife incident called the Sankebetsu brown bear incident. In December 1915, a brown bear attacked a house in a small farming village in Sankebetsu, Hokkaido. Inside were a mother and her 6-year-old son. Later, when the father returned home, he found the child's body inside a house. The mother's body was nowhere to be found. She was discovered days later, hidden deep in the mountains. In Golden Kamuy Episode 1, there's a very similar scene. This reflects a real behavior of brown bears. Once a bear recognizes something as its prey, it doesn't just let go. Bears sometimes hide what they can't finish eating and return to it later. At the time, this behavior wasn't widely understood. That lack of knowledge is believed to be one reason the tragedy continued. The mother's body was brought back home, and a funeral was held there. Including the father, 9 people were gathered. And that's when the same bear returned and attacked the house again. Fortunately, no one was killed then. But they fled to another house, and just as they began to feel safe, the bear attacked them once again. There was almost nothing the villagers could do. In the end, 7 people were killed, and 3 were seriously injured. After that, a large-scale hunting party was organized by the police and the military, and one of the hunters was Saichi Sugimoto. Deep in the mountains, he spotted a bear and closed in to about 22 yards. Hiding behind a tree, he fired. The bullet struck near the heart, but the bear didn't fall. Instead, it stood up and stared straight at him. Yamamoto stayed calm and fired a second shot straight through the bear's head. That finally ended the incident. Thanks to him, no further victims were claimed. And the frightening thing is, this isn't just a story from the past. Today in Japan, bear attacks are occurring at a record pace across the country. When Golden Kamuy was first serialized, this felt like a distant, historical horror. But now it's something many people genuinely fear. Living alongside nature, and sometimes being forced to fight it. If Nihei or Yamamoto were alive now, what would they say about the world we're living in? It's hard not to think about that. The final one is Tatsuuma Ushiyama. He's one of the escaped prisoners from Abashiri prison, a massive man and a judo fighter. When it comes to pure hand-to-hand combat, there's no question he's the strongest character in the series. Because of that overwhelming strength, he's known as Ushiyama the Undefeated. At his core, Ushiyama is actually a gentleman. He's warm-hearted and kind to women and children, but is also incredibly driven by his instincts. And if he can't release that energy, things tend to go off the rails. Tatsuuma Ushiyama is said to be inspired by a real person, Tatsuuma Ushijima. Honestly, just looking at his photo kind of says it all. The deep-set features, the powerful build, the resemblance is almost too perfect. Even their names are incredibly similar. The real Ushijima was born in 1904 and became a legendary judo fighter. He won the All Japan Judo Championship 5 times, making him one of the absolute top fighters of his era. That's why his nickname was Ushijima the Undefeated. In Golden Kamuy, there are scenes where Ushiyama practices throws against a large tree 1,000 times, to the point that the tree actually withers. There's also a description of his back becoming as tough as a heel. Those details aren't just exaggerated fiction. The real Ushijima actually trained that way. He even passed this training on to his disciple. His skin would tear again, heal again, until it really did become thick and hardened like a heel. There's another famous story about Ushijima. The day before a match, he would drink the blood of a soft-shell turtle. On the day of the match, he would hold powdered mamushi, a venomous snake, in his mouth. In Japan, both soft-shell turtle and mamushi are symbols of vitality and stamina, so it's not hard to imagine how this idea got twisted into Golden Kamuy's version of Ushiyama as an uncontrollable force of desire. Probably. And one last thing, the real Ushijima actually had an arrest record. He had connections with military officers and politicians, and during World War II, he was involved in a plot to assassinate the prime minister. The plan was discovered before it could be carried out, and he was not prosecuted. That part is very different from Golden Kamuy. In the series, Ushiyama's crime is portrayed as having an affair with his master's wife, and then killing his master during the resulting confrontation, also severely injuring other disciples. So yeah, that part is quite different. Still, when you look at Tatsuuma Ushijima's life, it almost feels fictional, but he was very real. And that overwhelming presence and intensity are what give Tatsuuma Ushiyama so much weight as a character. So today, we looked at the real-life inspirations behind 4 incredibly intense characters. I'd love to hear what you thought, so please share your reactions in the comments. If you had fun with this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.